Roundtable. My name is Bill Jackson. I'm president of this group. Do I need this?
Yeah.
I do need this. Well, that's the first time somebody's told me the other way around. It's shut up. But anyway, welcome to the Capillary World War II Roundtable. I forgot it last month, but being patriotic Americans, let's start with a pledge to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple pieces of business before we get down to our speaker. I got a treasurer's report from Patty, and we're almost there, Mike. Cancun is looming. With last month's receipts of $139 and our big interest payment from the bank of 11 cents, our treasury is now $972.42. I was asked by the Palmyra Library, did I pronounce that right? Palmyra, yeah. Don't you know? They're going to have a program on March the 5th called Music of World War II at 7 o'clock at the Palmyra Library. And I'll read what they say here. Come listen to Glenn Miller, Bing Crosby, the Andrews Sisters, Kate Smith, and many others. It will be a presentation by Dr. Atterbury, who is one of the speakers for the Pennsylvania Humanities Council's series. Anyway, they invite you all. For those of you like who can't remember things, there are 3 bookmarks up here that you can pick up that have the date on. For any of you who aren't on the mailing list that didn't get the word, fill in a card up or a slip up here, and we'll get you on the mailing list next month. The other thing that I wanted to mention tonight, we've had some people say, do you think we could put together a trip and go see the World War II Memorial? And I ran a trip down there for the Hummelstown Area Historical Society, and we made a day of it. We went down in the morning and spent over an hour at the World War II Memorial, and we packed up and went out to the new Air and Space Museum at Dulles Airport. They have a nice restaurant there, and we got there in time for lunch, and then we hung around there for about 3 hours after that, and then headed on home. Do you think there'd be enough interest here we could fill a 45-person bus? What do you think? Okay. I'll talk to Capital Trailways. They're the ones that I ran it through before. I don't know what's going to happen now with the raising the price of gas, but when we did that one, we did it for $25 a person. So we should be able to do, hopefully, not too much more than that. The other one, and Mike Charney, our program chairman, mentioned it to me. Mike's very much involved with World War II days at Reading every year. What are the dates this year, Mike?
June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. What do you guys think if we try and get a school bus and just go down there for a day and come back for a day, if we can work that out? Does that sound like something you'd be interested in?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me work on both of those projects, and we'll try and have some answers for you by the next meeting. Yes? Well, it'll cost us more. Well, I'll tell you, a 45-passenger bus right now is costing about $1,000. Well, it might be a little less for Reading, but I know it's $1,000. It's $1,000 for us to go. Where are we going? Oh, we're going to Philadelphia, and that's $1,000. So no, the gas is killing these guys. And the buses are pretty much sold out until June, so it wouldn't be the nice weather. So don't worry about slushing through the snow. But anyway, at this point, I would introduce our program chairman, Mr. Mike Charney, the tall guy with the great beard. And Michael, take it away.
By the way, for the wedding trip, don't tell my boss, the president, but I would get free tickets for everybody. Of course, we have to sneak you in. You're going to have to be dressed up in costume and just sort of run around the gates and stuff like that. We'll get you in. We can cut right into the cost. We have a little bit of business before our wonderful speaker comes forward. I'd like to ask Ms. May Graybill to come forward, please. Okay. Those of you who weren't here, you missed a lovely talk by a woman who basically riveted those over 5,000 B-26s at Glen L. Martin Company, as well as the 6 Martin Marses. I'd like to present Rich Lytle, member, who will, as a presentation. Rich?
May, you had mentioned, well, you didn't have an E for Excellence pin for your work. We found you an E for Excellence pin. And I also went through 4344, and there's the official picture of the ladies riveting out in California, okay? And there's also 3 ads here for Martin Marietta's aircraft that you worked on. And we thank you very much for willing to share with us. Thank you.
I'd like to present to May this very expensive black piece of paper that costs $900 well, how much did you say? $72, and that's the price. But to a dear, dear friend and a lovely lady, I'd like to read to you. It basically says the Capital Area World War II Roundtable membership would like to recognize the outstanding contributions and dedication of Ms. May Graybill during the war years at the Glen L. Martin plant, Baltimore, Maryland. In honor of your diligence, perseverance, and patriotism, and in gratitude for your presentation on January 4, 2007 in Hershey, Pennsylvania, we, the Brotherhood and Sisterhood of the CAWWTR, are pleased to present you with this E for Excellence pin, Rich, and this very expensive piece of paper.
I just have to tell you one thing. Martin built 6 Mars, and after the war they were sold to Canada. They used them up there to use water for fires in the mountain, you know. And there's 2 left. And Glen L. Martin's is going to have one come back to the museum in Baltimore. I got a letter, and they said they wanted a donation, and of course I sent a donation, and they're going to fly it from Canada to Glen L. Martin's in Middle River, Maryland. And they do need a lot of money. But anyway, they're doing very well. I talked to one of the men down there. And I worked on one of the Mars. I did some riveting.
Thank you so much, Rick. We really appreciate it. Thank you for coming and sharing. Thank you so much.
I'll be giving this right back to you, Michael. Don't go too far. I just wanted you to know that Pennsylvania Cable Network, again, left us some of the books from the first group that they had on World War II in their own words. Our speaker tonight is one of the ones who's in that book. And if I twist your arm, Frank, would you sign a few of them afterwards? Frank Lashinsky's here again. He's also in the book, and he said he's lowered the rate to $10 per month. So and those of you who pick up a book tonight can also get Frank's on it. Okay, Michael, our speaker.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. Hi, Virginia. I don't have any copies yet, but I do have the brochure for this year's wedding World War II weekend. And as a promise to you guys, but shh, don't tell the president. I'll get you in. We'll get free tickets, and we have that bus trip. But I just wanted to let you know Tex Hill is coming. Flying Tigers, Dutch Van Kirk, Marvin Parrott, Higgins Boat Commander, Mike Carilla, Indianapolis survivor, wonderful guy. Joe Peterburs, who's a P-51 pilot who shot down. The ace, Walter Shook, flying a piece of ME-262. jet fighter. They're both coming in. They're going to be reunited. That should be interesting. Hank Heim, our own Hank Heim, will be speaking. Bob Bolinger, P-61. We have Tuskegee guys coming in. Len Lamel and Frank South, the D-Day Rangers of the Pointe du Hoc, who scaled out and knocked out the guns, are coming. Our own Frank Speer will be coming. Carl Constein, a hunt pilot. Bill Miller, upper turret gunner, who was here. Larry O'Rourke, Paul Gordon, who spoke. Frankie, our own Frankie Lashinsky. Dick Wheeler is coming out of seclusion up in Pine Grove. The hero, one of the heroes of Iwo Jima. It was his group who raised the flag. He also wrote Climbing Mount Suribachi and the definitive book on Iwo. Just met with President Bush, and he's coming to the show. Mary Fike, who I'd like to get up here as a speaker. Our own May Graybill, Rosie the Riveter. Evangeline Queeman, who was a nurse, Normandy, to the liberation of the camps. Dave Coley, historian, and Band of Brothers about Compton, Don Malarkey, and Forrest Guth, in addition to many others. So it's going to be a great show. You can take a look at it here. One bit of, I'm sorry to do this. I have an individual, I have to ask a favor of you guys, real quick. This individual is Marvin Parrott. He spoke last year. He's a hoot. This is him in his SP uniform. He drove a Higgins boat, Operation Dragoon. Tiger was there when the E-boats infiltrated the practice exercise that killed about 800 Americans. He was at Normandy getting shot at. His Higgins boat got blown out from under him at Iwo Jima, and he ultimately had to pick up a rifle and started firing, and was at Okinawa. He's coming here on the 27th of September to come to Reading, and I thought we'd have a special presentation in June, the 31st of May, not June 7th. And also at that time, Tex Hill, the Flying Tiger Ace, and the American Volunteer Group, as well as 23rd Fighter Group, I have to pick them up at the airport. So that night, that Thursday, the 31st, we may have two really outstanding speakers here. It'll be an ad hoc special presentation, and Bill asked me to present it to you guys and ladies, if you can. We'll be hearing more. But I need a home for this guy. He was going to stay at my home. My son is actually not traveling. He'll be at the place, sleeping in his bed. So Marvin said, instead of driving back to New Orleans, he'll be at an Admiral's, some sort of banquet on the weekend. And instead of driving back to New Orleans and driving back to Reading, that I invited him to stay here. And if anybody has a bed, he said he'll sleep in a hammock in his van. But if anybody has an extra spare bed, this guy's delightful. You'll be entertained. He gets my highest recommendation. And I have some handouts here if you need any information, and should you be interested in having Marvin stay with you. He's a lovely Southern gentleman and just a great guy. So if you could help out, that would be absolutely wonderful. Okay, Frank. I'm really delighted to invite an old friend. He accepted, and his lovely wife, Ann. Speaker tonight is Lieutenant Frank Speer of the 4th Fighter Group. Frank had an illustrious career in Europe, flying with one of the most famous fighter groups, probably the most noteworthy and illustrious group, along with the 56 Fighter Group. He was led by Don Blakesley, and he's going to tell us all about his exploits today. He shot up a lot of aircraft, and down in the deck, a number of aces and pilots themselves got shot down. It was very, very dangerous work flying the spam can, and getting one bullet that disrupted your coolant lines caused you to auger in. That's what happened to Frank. He was taken prisoner of war, was involved in some of the winter marches, and he eventually evaded and ultimately escaped. So that's something really special. So Frank, he's a local fella from Albertus, right? That's where you grew up, on the farm. He plants his own vegetables and plays tennis every day and has a martini at 4. And he's just in great shape. But he's writing he has the definitive book. If anybody's interested, it's outstanding, on the Debden Warbirds. This is the book that everybody cites in the 4th Fighter Group history. He has a whole bunch up here. You can pick them up. And One Down, One Dead. A great little book. I haven't read this one yet, but Wingman, if you could find it, it's a classic. Probably the best articulated discussion of coming down in the fog over the North Sea that I've ever read, and it's just really great. So I'd like to let us give one of our warm World War II roundtable of the capital area welcomes to Frank Speer and his wife Ann. Frankie, come on up.
We'll work it out. I hate when I get such a good introduction. People expect too much. However, I'll go on with it as best I can. I generally come with a prepared speech. However, I find I do better if I just talk off the cuff. I first of all want to show my appreciation to Rosie the Riveter. The 26 was a great airplane. I don't know whether, I'm not here to talk about that, but it was a great airplane. Over England, we used to buzz with them once in a while, and they were super plain, considering the fact that their configuration was such that they're not supposed to fly. They're like a bumblebee. But somehow they got them off the ground, and when they did, they were great. Well, I'll start at the beginning. I generally speak extemporaneously because my mind wanders a lot, and sometimes that's best. Oh, geez, I forgot my picture. I got to show you the picture, for goodness sakes. Proverbial World War II fighter pilot's supposed to look like. He's aggressive, gallant. He's just a wonderful guy, one that you want to know. And unfortunately, after 60 years, they turn into something like this. However,
You've been there, sir.
I have another thing I want to show you a little bit later. So I'll drag this over here. It would appear that I'm not really prepared for this speech, and you're right. Well, to begin with, I fought all the odds there were to become a fighter pilot. The odds were pretty heavy. When I wanted to join, you had to be a college graduate. I had only graduated from high school. You were not to be married. I was married. And worst of all, you're supposed to have all your teeth. And I had 2 wisdom teeth missing. I overcame these odds and became a fighter pilot. I was introduced into the program. I graduated at the head of my class, number 3 in gunnery school, and although they told me all the way through that I could never be a fighter pilot because I'm too big, somehow when I graduated, there were 6 enemy planes destroyed, managed to get myself shot down, strafing, which was one of our worst things you can happen to you, and became a prisoner of war. Eventually I escaped, captured some German soldiers, turned them over to our forces, and they in turn incarcerated me because they didn't know who I was. They thought I might be a German spy or something. So then I had to escape from the Allied forces. Patton's command it was. They had a hell of a firefight, and I figured this isn't my kind of war. I don't go for this at all. I'm up in the air. So we escaped from them and took off, got back to our own jurisdiction. Now, I do have these notes just so I don't forget anything, because I feel that everything I say to you is so important, I don't want you to miss anything. Okay? I'd like to talk generally tonight about being a prisoner of war. I'm not going to tell you gory stories about being a prisoner of war. I look on the optimistic side of things, and I want to tell you some of what I think were the funny things that happened as a prisoner of war. How many of you were prisoners of war? Any? You can check me out. As a prisoner of war, to begin with, you had several things that made life miserable for you. We had every kind of lice that's ever been invented. Now, I was very fortunate. They didn't bother me, but I harbored them. I was a breeder. Every morning, I would wake up and look under my arms. Every little hair had a little white egg on it. They were just lined up so beautifully, it was almost like the Luftwaffe would line up their planes, you know? And I would take one sweep like this and wipe out a whole generation. The other thing that was possibly the worst thing you can imagine, constant dysentery. Now, you may have had dysentery with a 24-hour virus, but you ain't never had anything like this. You go into the bathroom at night and you don't know which end it's going to come out, but it's going to come out one way or the other. That's a terrible thought, but that's what we had to live with. The other thing, we were constantly cold. We had no heat. We were in the winter, where the Battle of the Bulge was fought. We were living in barracks with no heat, and we're just freezing all the time. And along with that, constantly hungry. You never, ever had enough to eat. And what you did eat didn't stay with you long. I'm particularly reminded of the German bread. I don't know whether any of you had the opportunity to taste this delicacy, but it was a soggy brown loaf. According to the records, they were supposed to give us 5.5 pounds a week. 4.5 pounds of that had to be water. The other 10 pounds were methane gas generators. You cannot believe the effect that bread had on you. To begin with, to eat it so it would stay with you, you had to throw it on the stove and just leave it there until it became hard enough that you could drive a nail with it. Then you could eat it, and it was palatable. Nevertheless, the methane gas did not leave. The gas was so bad, we would have 15 of us in a room, which was from here to that doorway, square, 15 of us, triple-deck bunks. They would lock the doors, shutter the windows, and we were in there, 15 of us. The air was so foul that the cockroaches wouldn't even come in. And they were sturdy cockroaches. I have proof, and I'm not just saying this, but the bread actually was 30% wood fiber. So you know where the methane came from. Now, in barracks life, you do almost anything sometimes to relieve the monotony. One night, I have no idea why, things just come to me spontaneously, sometimes to my detriment, sometimes to my relief. At any rate, I had the middle deck next to the door. Now, what happened every evening, all all of us were rousted out into the parade ground, lined up, and they counted us to make sure we were all there. And then they would move us into our barracks and into our rooms. They would, as I said, lock the doors, shutter the windows, and then after we were all settled down, they would turn the dogs loose in the compound, so you couldn't jump out a window or anything, and they would come in and count you again in the room. Now, we've got 5 triple-deck bunks around the circumference of this room, and 2 men would come in, generally a sergeant and a corporal or a private. One would go clockwise around the room, the other would go counterclockwise. They would count us, they would meet at the door, confirm the count, and go on to the next room. So this one night, devil made me do it, I guess. Being in the middle bunk at the door, they're coming around, Dreit saying, Beard saying, Vim saying, in the same monotone I said, sex saying. Each thought the other had said it. Now in the German military, rank is powerful. You don't talk back. So the sergeant, of course, thinking the corporal said this, he just had that kind of brace and he's reaming him out, telling him what a dummkopf he is. Can't count to 15 even, you know. And the corporal, he's standing there, he's probably thinking, well, you jerk, or something of that nature. And he just had to take it. Second time around, same thing happened. Dreit saying, Beard saying, Vim saying, sex saying. There's a little silence. Then that poor corporal, he just got chewed out from top to bottom again. And he's standing there braced, taking, he can't say a daggone word. Okay, the third time around was a little different. The sergeant now, thinking the corporal made a mistake, he's counting, but he's watching. He's watching the corporal. He's going like this, you know. And they get to the door, and they're coming, Dreit saying, Beard saying, Vim saying, and I'll tell you, I don't need any cooler time, so I just kept quiet. So we got to 15. Now the sergeant turned on this corporal and he is chewing him out and said, I told you, you know, you're so stupid, you can't even count to 15. And the corporal, he's standing there in a brace and his face is livid. He's being chewed out, you know, and he's thinking, I didn't do nothing, you know. And he's finally, to get the sergeant off his back, he says, yeah, should sing. He agrees. You know, funny things happen. Don't know why, but we do things like that. Hey, wherever the American soldier gets together, there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of people getting killed, a lot of people getting hurt, but there's sure a lot of humor going on, too. You can ask anybody from the Band of Brothers or any of the Battle of the Bulge, and you know, you've seen the pictures, you see humor in some of them. That's real. These guys, that's the only thing they lived for, really. They have to fight and to make believe they're still alive. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the P-51, which was the plane that I flew in combat. P-51 was an amazing plane. It was originally conceived for the British as a dive bomber. It had a relatively low-powered engine, which had an altitude rating of maybe 15,000 feet at the most, which is all you needed for a dive bomber. The British got this dive bomber, which incidentally went from drawing board to flying in less than a year, unbelievably. And they put this Merlin engine in it, 1,650 horsepower. They took off the dive brakes, they took off the bomb racks and all the external paraphernalia, and they had a zinger. The best propeller-driven fighter plane the world has ever seen or ever will see, because now, instead of having these things that go around in front, they got stuff that shoots fire out the back. That's an entirely different program. It's not the same, believe me. But the P-51 turned out to be a masterful aircraft. It was, I also flew a P-47, which I can relate to the fact that the P-51 was the sports car, the P-47 was a truck. 7 tons of it. But at any rate, they both did their job. They were both great. The P-47 could take a lot of damage and bring you home. The P-51, all it needed was a bullet hole in one of the coolant lines and you were done. Fortunately, we were fast enough and intelligent enough to stay out of the way most of the time. I, of course, proved that to be false, in that I got shot up and I had to crash land. The way this came about was we had been on a bomber escort mission to Posen, Poland, which I'd been in the air about 5 hours sitting on that hard Mae West and, not the Mae West, but the dinghy, which seemed to have protrusions in it built to make you discomfortable, or uncomfortable rather. And after 5 hours on the way back, my buddy and I discovered a target of opportunity. We saw an airfield that had planes on it, and apparently they didn't know we were around, so we decided to strafe it, which was alone. Strafing, 2 of you strafing an airdrome was like a suicide pact. The way things happen, you come across very low. I was wingman, the leader. He's flying here, I'm flying back and to his left. Now, what generally happens is they're aiming at him, but they don't know how fast he's going, and the bullets are hitting me. There's nothing I can do about it, though. You know, I can't say, hey, slow down and let me go ahead. At any rate, they caught me. I had to crash land. I was too low to get up and parachute. We had left 7 planes burning on that field. So it seems to me now, in retrospect, that 7 to 1 is pretty good odds. I paid the price. At any rate, I crash landed. This was all wooded area. There was a little opening about twice the size of this area here. How I did it, I'll never know. I didn't know I was that good a pilot. But I set that plane down in that area without hitting the trees on either end. Of course, once you hit the ground with that P-51, with that air scoop under it, you stop. You don't do any gliding. I got out of that plane, and I looked off to my left, and here is a little village. People are streaming out of this village with baseball bats, clubs, pitchforks, all kinds of nasty-looking equipment which I did not want to make acquaintance with. And on the other hand, we just strafed an airport, and they're coming after me. I'm in the middle. Somehow, miraculously, I evaded. I was able to get away. I spent the next 8 days traveling by foot almost 400 miles across Germany, watching my back all the way, thinking they're after me. Finally, I passed out from exhaustion, no food, no sleep, and I woke up with 2 Germans prodding me in the head with the rifles. They weren't even looking at me. They stumbled over me practically, and there I was. No way out of that. I somehow you cannot find, I could not find the bravado to face two guys with two rifles. So I just accepted their invitation to join them. Eventually ended up in this prison camp that I told you about. And then things got from bad to worse. We're in this camp at Stalag 3, which is one of the most famous camps. It's the one from which the Great Escape took place, where 70-some English soldiers escaped, and some 50 of them were shot in cold blood. So when I got there after this, they were not too friendly toward us. They were not willing to bend any rules or anything, and so we just had to live and plot. And every one of us plotted every day, how do we get out of here? What can we do to confound them? Because every time somebody makes a mistake, or as an escape rather, and gets caught, the Germans then figure countermeasures so this doesn't happen again. They keep tightening up and tightening up. And it got harder and harder to escape. So not too much was going on in that respect at that time. However, the Russians started to cross towards our camp. It looked like they would liberate us, and the Germans did not want to give us up. We were trading stamps at that point, and so they moved us out. You've all seen the movie about the Battle of the Bulge. That's the weather into which we were forced to march, illy clothed, no food, no water, and just terrible situation. People were bundled up in everything they had with blankets over them. I was reminded very much of pictures I've seen from George Washington's group at Valley Forge in the winter, how they were just existing. We were existing on that march. Some people were not existing. As a matter of fact, many of the guys dropped out. We have no idea what happened to them. We don't have any idea how many of them dropped out either. Everybody was bundled up. You didn't even know who they were. At the end of this march, the first period, I went for 77 hours straight. That's over 3 days and 3 nights on this march in the snow with no rest. Now you can imagine we were just automatons, just moving one foot in front of the other, you know, just slogging along. We had no life to speak of. We get to this little village. It was just dawning, and they stood us out in the cold while they looked for places to put us up, you know, like a factory or something that they could move us into. I was standing on this little bridge over a stream, and the guy next to me, after we waited there maybe 10, 15 minutes, he just said, "I've had it." He jumped over the railing head first, through the ice, never came up, never saw him again, had no idea even who he was. This is the kind of situation we found ourselves in. I could go on and on with that, but I'd like to get on with other things about the story. Eventually, we got to another camp at Nuremberg, and from there, Patton started to cross France, and it looked like he may be going to liberate us. And so the Germans again decided to move us. This time the weather was much more amenable, except that it was raining constantly. It made it very miserable. At any rate, I got to tell you a little story here about the first night out. As prisoners of war, we were always resourceful. What little they gave us to eat, we would always try to put a little something aside that we might use for barter if we ever had the opportunity. I was wealthy because I didn't smoke, and I was good in poker, so I always had a lot of American cigarettes, which were very good trading material. One guy had saved up 2/3 of a tin of cocoa. Now this fellow was from Bloomington, Illinois. He was a farm boy who had been raised on meat and potatoes and corn and eggs and milk, and he just loved that kind of stuff. And all the time he's in prison camp, he's always he wanted to have a fresh egg. Well, you know, the Germans were not too accommodating in that aspect. So he didn't get a fresh egg. So he had saved all this cocoa, and when we were the first night out on the 2nd March, they herded us all into a big park in the middle of this little town that was surrounded by a high metal fence. And put guards around the fence and just left us in there to do what we cared to do, you know. So he was going around with this tin of chocolate. See, the German civilians came out and they're peering through these bars at us like we're in a zoo. And we're looking back at them like they're in a zoo. But at any rate, he found this an opportunity to search for an egg. So he went around talking to people, see if anybody had an egg that they would trade for his chocolate. He finally found a young woman who said she had an egg. He said, well, fine, you go get the egg. She said, I want to see the chocolate. So he showed her 2/3 can chocolate. She said, I want a full can. He said, well, you go get the egg, I'll go get the chocolate. So while she's off getting the egg, he manufactured chocolate out of the brown sand that he picked up and mixed in with the cocoa, and he had a full can. So they made the trade. There was no way he could cook this egg at that time, and so he wrapped it all up in toilet paper, which is the only thing we ever seem to have enough of, and packed it away in his pack till he got to a place where he could cook it. Finally, a couple days later, they had us out in a big field, all by ourselves. It was near a wood, and he picked up some twigs and whatnot, and made a little fire, got out his tin can frying pan, and he's making like a chef, you know, with his movements, and he's going to cook this egg, and we're all standing around salivating, you know, vicariously helping him eat this egg. So he gets everything all ready, taps the egg, nothing happened. Tapped it a little harder, nothing happened. He pounded it, nothing happened. Upon examination, he discovered that for his can of sand, he got a ceramic egg. And I'll tell you, to this day, he has never lived it down. We reminded him constantly after that how good he was at determining what an egg should look like. Where's Mike?
Back here, Frank.
How am I running on time?
You're great.
Well, how much more time do I have?
2-3 hours.
Believe me, I can fill them, but I know you don't want to hear it. Maybe it's time for me to ask, does anybody have any questions?
Did you ever try to escape?
3 times. I made it on the 3rd time. Back there you had a question.
When you flew, did you have the B model of the P-51 or did you have the D model?
I flew both. They were mixed, you know. One day you got one day you got another, depending on what was flyable at the time. There was a lady back there that...
Yes, I was very interested in the actual tactical went through in the camp, such as how much food did they actually give you? What did they provide you? Did you get a blanket? Things like that.
Okay. You got a lot of answers coming there.
I'm willing to hear 'em.
We got a blanket. When we got in, we initially were given an overcoat, a blanket, a pair of pants and a shirt, and I guess some underwear and socks, come to think of it. Shoes were in short supply. What you were wearing when you were captured is generally what you wore the rest of the time you were there. Sleeping accommodations were not exactly the greatest. These triple-deck bunks had wooden slats in them, running transversely across your body. And there was about this much room between the slats, and you had thin, straw-filled mattresses, so that when you slept, your body was shaped like this. It was not very comfortable, to say the least. Every once in a while, we'd get excited and go out and fluff up our mattress, which was filled with straw fiber, and we'd put it back in the sack, and we'd crawl on it, and within an hour, you're sleeping like this again. It didn't last very long. Food. Food is one of the things I like to talk about. The Germans had some very unusual things to feed us. They had two kinds of soup. One we called gray death, the other we called green death. And it had nothing to do with what was in it. It was just the color of the mess. It was, one of my favorites was the pea soup. Actually had peas in it. Tell you something, boy, to have peas in the soup. Unfortunately, these peas were a little different than any you've ever seen before. Excuse me. The peas, apparently in their growing stage, an insect laid an egg on them. The egg developed in the pea, so that by the time the pea was picked, the entire inside of the pea was a hard-shelled insect. It was probably the major source of protein we had in the whole diet. It was a hard-shelled insect. You've all eaten grape nuts. That's what it was like to eat these peas in this pea soup. Green death, gray death. Oh, bread. I told you about the bread being 30% wood fiber, totally indigestible. We got a slice a day normally. One thing we got all of it that we could handle was blood sausage. Totally indigestible. Nobody could eat it and keep it down. And so you might as well wipe that off of the menu. Now this was supplemented by Red Cross parcels. Now Red Cross parcels came in a box which was designed to give you 100% of your nutrients, one package per man per week. The most we ever got was a fifth of a package per man. And then when we moved out of camp, I had occasion to get into the warehouse where they kept these Red Cross parcels. There were mountains of them, and I mean mountains of these Red Cross parcels in there, never distributed to us. Probably the German civilians got them, I have no idea. We sure didn't get them. We were starving. We were really starving. I was there over 11 months. I lost 67 pounds from fighting weight. The Russians didn't fare as well as we. They actually had a designed starvation program for the Russian prisoners. they were trying to kill them. They, in their bread, besides having the wood fiber, they had straw. So that they would be filled up, but they would have no nutrients to speak of. Tea, that was another thing. You like tea? About the 7th time you use the same tea bag, it hardly covers the water, but you'll like it. Because that's all you have. What else? Does that answer your question? Yes.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about your escapes?
My escapes. I was afraid somebody asked that because now I had to show how utterly stupid I was. And I mean stupid. We were moving from one camp to another. This is a long string of Kriegis. That's Kriegsgefangenen, which is the German prisoner of war. We call them Kriegis. They were 4 abreast, probably a mile long, guards every 50 feet on each side with dogs. That's how they kept us in line. And it was getting dusk, and we were coming down this road, and up ahead there was a village. And there was a road, a street, went right straight through the village up over the hill. But I could see that our column, just before it reached that, was turning 90 degrees to the left. And I'm on this side of the line, and my buddy's next to me. And I said to him, you know, I'm not going back into that camp. I said, would you like to try something? He said, I'm game. What do you have in mind? I said, well, when we get to that corner, you and I are just going to continue straight ahead. Now, don't look back. Don't change pace. Don't do anything unusual. We'll just talk and move our arms like we're talking normally, and we're going to go right up that hill through that village. He said, okay. So we did it. Here we are, American uniforms, walking right through a German village, people out on the street. We nod to them as we go by and smile, you know. And we walk right through the town, up the hill, and out of sight. Unfortunately, we were captured later on, but at least we had our big adventure for the day. The third time I escaped was not nearly as spectacular. They were bivouacking us in barns along the way. The column would stop. They'd figure out how many could shove in the barn. They put them in there. The rest would go on to the next barn. So after a couple of days, I just figured out they never counted this when we went in. They never counted this when we came out. So one night, the way they got you out, really, after everybody was roused, they'd go in with bayonets and jab down in the hay all over to make sure nobody was hiding under the hay. So the barns there were very much like some of the old barns around here. They had these big boards, and then there'd be a gap with a couple of inches of air space and another board. So we went down along the edge where we could breathe out through one of these cracks, and we just dug down deep enough that they couldn't get us with a bayonet. And we stayed there till everybody was rousted out the next day. Then we came up and we walked down the street, the road rather, and make a long story short, we encountered some French forced laborers who hid us, stole food for us, kept us for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we were released when Patton's group came through. There's a story to that too, but I don't want to bore you with all these lengthy details. Any other questions? Yes?
What was discipline like in the camp?
Discipline. Well, discipline was such that you did what they said, you got up when they said, you went to appel when they said, you were herded into your rooms when they said, you were counted, you were watched constantly. They had guards in the compound all the time. They had what we called ferrets. The barracks were about that far off the ground, and the ferrets would crawl around under there with long probes, searching for funnel activity. It was not exactly a democracy, and it was kind of galling, but normally we could move around the camp pretty much at our leisure, and we had plenty of that. Any other questions? Yes?
What was your interrogation like, and what was the level of English among your guys that held you prisoner?
Interrogation was unbelievable. I don't know whether any of you have read the book by Hans Scharf, The Interrogator. Most of us pilots went through him. The interrogation started as you were ushered in, and he tried to be very friendly. Wanted to know if you would care for some biscuits and jam, which you hadn't had in weeks. You were just want to grab it and eat it, but you turn it down. He said, "Now, Lieutenant Speer, let's just be easy here. We have no problems. I just want to ask you a few questions." And he'd start by asking, and you refused, name, rank, serial number. And finally he said, "Well, you're apparently not interested in talking." I said, "No." He said, "Well, you go over there and sit down and fill out the Red Cross form so we can notify your next of kin that you're here." The Red Cross form was something that in their wildest dreams the Red Cross could never have thought of. It started out with your name, rank, serial number, next of kin, mission the day you were shot down, where you were shot down, what kind of equipment were you using, what was your, were you carrying bombs, what kind of firepower you had, all these questions on, all Red Cross interest material, of course, and you don't fill that out. So I handed it back to him. He looked at it and said, "You didn't fill this out." I said, "Well, I don't intend to." He said, "Well, we can't inform your next of kin if you don't fill this out." I said, "Well, my next of kin's just going to have to go without knowing about it." And he said, "Well, you refuse to tell me what I want to know. I have no choice. You were picked up in civilian clothes. Therefore, I can consider you a spy. You're going in solitary confinement for a week. At the end of that week, you're coming back in here and we're going to interrogate you again. If you don't talk, you'll be shot as a spy." Now that's a nice thought to harbor in your mind for a week in a dark, solitary room about 6 by 8, all alone. But come back, still didn't want to talk. And he bored in a little deeper. He said, we can make you talk." Tremulously, I said, "I'm sure you can, but I will resist as long as I can." He called a guard over. He said, "Put him with the rest of the guys, send him off to camp." It was a big poker game. He held all the cards. You didn't know that, though. We knew he had the cards. Yes?
Was that at Oberrussel, that camp north of Frankfurt?
Yes.
What about your captors then, the English they spoke in camp?
In camp, they spoke English about as well as we spoke German. It was polyglot nothing really, but we made ourselves understood. You had a question.
Yes. Where was the location of your third and successful escape? Where were you?
Well, it was south of the Danube at a place near Moosburg, which wound up being a camp, which was liberated by Patton's group. But I never got there. Yes.
The fourth fighter group was, it emerged from the Eagle Squadron.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about the fourth and Don Blakesley?
Yep.
And then maybe the rivalry with the 56th and Zemke's group.
What he's talking about is the fact that the 4th Fighter Group was originally constituted from what they called the Eagle Squadrons, which were men who had gone to Canada or England before we were in the war and fought for the Royal Canadian Air Force or the Royal Air Force. And then when our country went into the war, they asked these people, who are all American citizens, to come into our service and act as a group to indoctrinate other groups, really. They wanted to split them up and use them as teachers, which they refused to do. They stayed in one group and became the 4th Fighter Group. Now, this was led by Donald Blakesley most of the time. I mean, he was not the initial one, but he was the commanding officer a little later, and he was the toughest, hard as nails guy you could ever see. He would never ask you to fly a mission he wouldn't fly. In fact, he flew just about every mission almost. He even, in order to stay on flying status, he had the enlisted men lose records from time to time, so that nobody would ever know how many hours he really flew, which would force him to go back to the States. He hated Germans. He wanted to be the best fighter outfit in the war, and he was successful in that. The 4th Fighter Group, of which I was part, had 1,016 enemy planes destroyed. The next group in line flew P-47s, that was Zemke's group, and they had somewhere around 1,007 or something like that. So you had a P-51 group and a P-47 group that were actually friendly rivals, all trying to chew up the Luftwaffe. And we did a fine job, and I'll tell you, we did a heck of a lot of bomber escorts, and a lot of bomber pilots were very happy to see us, to herd them home. Many of the time we come back, we'd see bombers isolated coming back that had been shot up, and we would station 2 planes with them, each one, and herd them back to England so they wouldn't get shot up by fighters that came up as targets of opportunity to them.
Let me follow up with that. You're writing a book now on personalities. With Blakesley, is it true, that story about the nurses?
They weren't nurses.
What were they?
They were WAFs.
Is that true?
British. Well, I'll tell you something. He'll deny it. Well, we'll get into that. Blakesley was one of these. I told you in the beginning how fighter pilots are supposed to be aggressive and all that sort of thing, womanizers and drinkers and whatnot. But you can see by looking at me, I'm far from anything like that. Womanizer, what the heck would I do with one if I found one? So, at any rate, Blakesley...
You don't look like a librarian there.
actually was right in there drinking and chasing women. One time there was an inspection by a general, a surprise inspection of the base, and as he was coming in, word got in, and two of these British women, ground crew people, were seen jumping out of the window of his room. And the adjutant wanted to call him up for on charges, court-martialing. And the general said, well, if it had been one woman, yes, but two, I think he needs a medal. So, living in that base was very great. It was an old British base. We had indoor heat. I mean, we had, if my wife would stop talking, maybe I could be. We had waitress service. We had tablecloths. We had a bar. We had a batman. 4 of us shared a batman. This man's duty was to make our beds, shine our shoes, press our clothes, do all of the mundane things that you expect your wife to do. I'm going to pay for that.
Let's throw out some quick names for these folks. Beeson and Gentile.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you say anything?
Beeson?
Yeah.
Beeson and Gentile had a contest, more or less, in their minds as to who was going to shoot down most planes. Unfortunately, Beeson caught some flack and was shot down and became prisoner of war. So Gentile ended up being the first American fighter pilot to best Eddie Rickenbacker's record of World War I, which was 26 planes. Gentile, ended up with an official 27.8 planes to his credit, and the man who frequently flew with him as a partner, named Godfrey, thank you, ended up with over 30. Between the two of them, they had almost 60 planes to their credit. And I just got done writing the story about these two, which will be in my next book. But as fate would have it, they both died untimely deaths after the war. Any other questions?
What about Goodson? Any stories about Goodson?
Goodson, a very good friend of mine. He was a very brainy person. He ended up heading some huge company in Germany after the war. But at any rate, an incident of his, he was always, he spoke many languages, so he could get away with a lot of things. He went to London one time and got pretty well stewed, and he traded hats with somebody from Africa. He had a fez, and he traded his army hat for this, and he came back to town wearing his fez, and the MPs picked him up and said, "You're out of uniform." He says, "No, I'm a Muslim. This is my uniform. I belong to such and such a group, and we're allowed to wear these," and he talked his way out of this. That's the kind of guy he was. But he also ended up getting approximately 30 planes to his credit. And he also was down by flak on a airdrome beat-up. Now, this airdrome beat-up was tough. We generally had at least 1 out of 3 that went down that way. In other words, 1 out of every 3 got shot down over airdromes.
Frank, one final question for me. You have a good story, a good perspective, and on Kid Hofer. You operate.
Kid Hofer is the one I was flying with the day I was shot down. He was very lucky. As I said, they were shooting at him and hitting me. But Kid Hofer was the antithesis of what a fighter pilot should be in our group. We were supposed to be a team. Hofer was a loner. He was very good, very affable. People liked him, but discipline, he didn't have any sight for that at all. And it seemed like every time we'd go on a long mission, or you're supposed to stay in the group, he'd end up someplace else, hundreds of miles from where he's supposed to be. When he was finally shot down, he was 200 miles away from where he should be. He was shot down by flak, we now feel, in Czechoslovakia. Now, 200 miles off course is like you're here and you're heading for Allentown and you end up in Pittsburgh. Pretty far-fetched. I'm about the end of the line on this.
You hold it up, Frank. You hold it up, okay. Frank could go on and on, and he has some really great stories.
He's going to show us something else.
Yeah, sure, the show. Colonel, what do you got? You got a question?
Yeah, I took an interest in Kid Hofer because eventually was not confirmed that he might have been shot down by Eric Hartman, because when he does get shot down, it's on that escort mission, and he's attacked by 109s from the same unit over Hungary. But there's pictures, of Hofer in his football jersey, and he had a German Shepherd as a
Duke?
Yeah. Did they let him get away with this because he was a successful ace, or? And when you went with him, you were the only two guys. He just pulled you out of formation and you went down.
Right.
And nobody.
I was willing.
You were his wingman, right?
I looked very meek and mild, but I was very aggressive. I must admit it. I hate to admit it,
Well, you had to be. That's a trait to be a fighter pilot. But how did you get picked to be his wingman?
How did what?
How'd you get picked to be his wingman?
Well, it's not that I was picked to be his wingman. You flew with many different people.
Oh, you did?
Everybody did, except Gentile and Godfrey. They kind of had a pact that they went together wherever they could.
But like
the rest of us were kind of just loose, You're going and you're going to be his wingman, that kind of stuff.
But I thought the aces generally wanted, one of the better pilots as their wingman. Who flew wingman for Blakesley?
I flew once.
Did you?
Yeah, it's. I don't think he ever had anybody that he flew with frequently.
Were you there the day?
He generally would take somebody that was a novice.
Were you there the day Gentile pranged his P-51? How bad a chewing out did he get? Or was he actually confined to quarters in that?
He was confined to quarters. He was told, Blakesley had a maxim. If you cracked up a plane unnecessarily, you don't fly with us again. With almost 30 planes to his credit, Gentile, that's the end. He was confined to quarters, shipped back to the States. He never got back in the force again.
Yeah. Your 6 killed, were they air or ground?
1 air, the rest ground.
What was your air kill? Fighter, 109?
It was the 109, yes. There's a picture of me, a painting of me shooting down this 109 that hangs in the Pentagon in the Air Force Art Program.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Who did the painting?
A fellow from Hellertown.
Because I got involved in that and would bring some of the painters over to Germany. One of them, you ever heard of Harley Kopic? He does beautiful P-51s. I mean, he looks like a photograph.
No, I've not heard of it.
He told me he would give me one of his paintings if I got him a ride in a Phantom from the Richthofen squadron. I was able to arrange it for him.
Yeah, great.
But where did you go through basic training?
Basic
Flight training.
Goodfellow Field.
Sorry?
Goodfellow
Oh,
Field.
Goodfellow.
Flew multi-vibrators.
Did you go through Wrightsville
No,
for conversion to fighters?
no, I went to,
Wrightsville there in New Jersey?
no, I went to Texas.
Dice? The one that book's on?
I can't think of the name of the field anymore. But I converted into P-40s
Yeah.
with a bunch of Chinese pilots. And that was a story in itself. The field where we were flying these P-40s, beyond the end of the runway, for 50 to 100 yards, all the brush was hacked down at wing level of P-40s, where the Chinese overshot. If you'd be up flying and you hear on the RT, Chinese boy, come landing, clear runway. Everybody just got the hell out of there. They knew full and well they were coming in if they said they were coming in. It didn't matter whether they were high or low, they came in.
How did you like the P-40?
Well, it's, at that time, the first fighter I'd ever flown. It's great. In retrospect, it's pretty lousy. But you must admit that these were war-weary ones that had been to China, and they were the older models that were underpowered. So it was not a fair comparison for me to say they were a piece of junk, but they were a good learning experience.
Well, I got your book, but when you arrived with the Fourth, they were flying the P-47s. Right?
Yes, they were just getting rid of them.
Had they been flying, so you didn't get there when they were flying the Spitfires after
No.
they transferred out of the RAF?
No.
When did you arrive there?
I think it was March 44.
44? That was the start of the big week? Or
Yeah.
was that already over?
That was starting there.
Well, thank you. That was great.
What do you have to show us?
Okay.
Where did you fly most of your missions out of?
Depton, England. Depton, England.
In England? What, you know, remember what air bases you were?
Depton.
What was it? I'm sorry.
Depton.
D-E-B-C-E-F.
This is an unusual thing here I want to show you because I think it's really exciting. I'll bet there's not a person in this room that knows the origin of this situation. However, this was one of the most highly secret things that happened in World War II. This company, this is the back of a deck of cards before it's cut. On the other side, they had laminated a very fine escape map, so that if you were able to get out of the camp in Germany, this would show you where you could cross into Switzerland and places like that. Very secret information. This was laminated on those backs. Then they laminated the cards over this. Then they cut the deck. And it looked just like a regular pack of cards. A few people who were very sensitive to secrecy were given these decks, a few of them, and they were sent overseas to sons or brothers or husbands, who then took the cards, soaked them, peeled off the playing card, assembled the escape map on the back, and then they could copy this and give it throughout the camp. One of the best kept secrets in World War II. Very unique, very interesting. Very successful, yes.
Since the war, have you, excuse me, have you encountered any of the people that you might have faced, flew against?
I met Hans Scharf, the master interrogator of the Luftwaffe. He lives in this country. He has written a book. Very successful man, apparently.
About one or two. Any final questions? Anything burning? We're going to take a break, and then Frank will come back. We have another 2 hours or so.
Okay, before you run out the door, remember we do not have dues or membership cards, but instead of passing the hat, we pass the World War II steel pot.
I just wanted to say that we have a parting gift. This is Frank's aircraft. Frank's aircraft was called the Turnamite. That's the nose art. And it just says the Capital Area World War II Roundtable membership. Hold on. We'd like to recognize the outstanding contributions and dedication of Lieutenant Frank Speer. In honor of your duty, courage, patriotism displayed during your service before Congress in Denver, England, 1925. Honor your presentation on March 1st. We recognize and express our gratitude. And also thanks for your unselfish willingness to share your experience with kids and people on this World War II. So again, thanks, Frank.